Hi everyone and welcome to 5-Minute Language. Welcome to those of you who have subscribed recently, and if you still haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do and make sure you give this video a thumbs up to let me know that you liked it. So, I presume you're here because you want to find out how to sound more like a native speaker when speaking a foreign language. Let's see how I can help you figure it out. When I first moved to England, I really wanted to sound like a native speaker. I just wanted to be part of the crowd. I didn't want people to think that I was different in any way. But what that meant was that I hardly spoke at all. I didn't really want to get involved in group conversations. I preferred one-to-one settings, and I was a bit shy because I felt that I didn't really speak English perfectly or like a native speaker. I definitely wouldn't want you to feel that way. So the main piece of advice I want to give you before we get into the video is that you shouldn't worry about your accent and you shouldn't treat speaking like a native speaker as your ultimate goal. But if you're a language geek like myself, you might want to be interested in sounding a little bit more like a native speaker. And this is what the video is about. And I presume that's why you clicked on it. So, let's get started. My first tip is about analyzing spoken language. Find a recording of the language that you're learning and analyze it. Listen to it very carefully and listen specifically for things like what sounds or words blend into one. What words sound similar even though they're spelled differently? Which letters are pronounced differently to how you thought they would be pronounced? Which letters are not pronounced at all? While you're listening, make notes and write down the things that you notice. You will very soon start noticing patterns and themes, and you will be able to see things that you didn't see before, which will help you sound a little bit more like a native speaker when saying those words or sentences. Tip number 2, focus on pronunciation. It's something that's easier said than done, I know, because everyone, when they try to learn a foreign language, try to pronounce every single word as well as they can, and often they can't really hear the difference between themselves and a native speaker. So, what I would recommend that you do is take pairs of words that sound very similar to each other. For example, in English, they would be words been and bin. So the difference between them is just that little sound in the middle, which is pronounced in a long or short way, depending on which word it is that you're saying. So listening to those different words, I recommend Google Translate, by the way, because you can hear the pronunciation of the words there. Listening to those couples or pairs of words will help you see the difference, which is often very small. And try to repeat it after Google Translate as many times as you can to make sure that you get it right. Tip number 3 is get your word stress right. Word stress is basically about emphasizing the right syllable in every word. So for example, in the Spanish word mañana, which means tomorrow, the second syllable of the word is emphasized. It's pronounced a little bit more strongly than the other syllables. And word stress is something that you need to master if you want to sound like a native speaker. Again, you can use Google Translate to check the pronunciation of different words and just listen for stress. Highlight the syllables that are stressed or emphasized a little bit more and make sure that you repeat them after the recording. Tip number 4, get your sentence stress right. Sentence stress is a bit like word stress, but in this case, it's about emphasizing individual words in sentences. For example, in English, I could tell you, I work in London, and you could ask me, but where do you live? So you've emphasized the word live. Where do you live? I live in Paris. So I stressed that verb to emphasize that I work in London, but I live in Paris. Tip number 5, get the musicality right. Language is a little bit like music, and what I'm talking about here is intonation. Intonation is basically how the language that you're speaking flows. It goes up and down and up and down, and in different languages it goes up and down differently, and sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's flat. Getting your intonation right will help you sound more like a native speaker. My tip would be to listen to a recording and repeat after it, but using a made-up word or a made-up sound, such as me. So listen to your sentence and then repeat, using the sound me, and it will sound something like me, 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 me. So you just practice the pronunciation and the musicality of the language rather than anything else. Tip number 6, use conversation links. Conversation links are basically words that native speakers will use when they connect their sentences together or when they react to something somebody else is saying. So for example, in English, somebody can tell you, my friend won the lottery yesterday. And you can say, really? Or did he? And that's the kind of thing you would say naturally as a native speaker. So knowing what these different connectors are will help you sound more like a native speaker yourself. Tip number 7, use fillers. And what I mean by fillers are basically those words, or rather non-words, that native speakers use when they're thinking about something. So for example, in English, it's something like, It could be something like the word like, which is something that English people use a lot. The word doesn't really mean anything in itself, but it's a filler that many native speakers use. And if you use that, then you sound more like a native speaker. Tip number 8, get the register right. What I mean by that is you should understand the difference between formal and informal language in the language that you're learning. So if you want to sound more like a native speaker, you need to make sure that you use formal and informal language correctly. For example, in English, you could say to your friend, I got an email yesterday, and that's fine. But if you said, I received an email yesterday, it's a bit more formal, and your friend might be wondering, why are you being so formal? We're just having a friendly, informal chat. So make sure that you know which words can be used in different contexts. Tip number 9 is quite similar to the one I've just given you. It's about using informal language as much as you can in situations where it's appropriate. It's good to keep a list of things that people say. So for example, in English, it can be something like cool. You know, somebody is telling you something interesting, and that's how you can react to it, by saying, oh, that's really cool. Tip number 10 is about body language. Make sure you get the body language right. And what I mean by body language is it's both how you move your body when you speak, but also your facial expression. So how you express your emotions through your face. A good way to practice body language or learn more about it is to watch videos on YouTube of people speaking your target language, or watching videos, watching films, watching music videos, and just learning how people interact with each other using their bodies to express their message. Anyway, the bottom line, like I said, is these are some tips if you want to improve your pronunciation. Learning a language is all about communication, and if you can communicate, that's the most important thing. Also, having an accent is part of your identity. It's a good conversation starter. It's a nice way for people to be able to say, hey, you speak English, where are you from? And then you have a friendly conversation about where you're from, where the other person is from. It's a nice way to get the conversation flowing and be friendly with each other. Also, the question of speaking like a native is a difficult one, because what does it mean to be a native speaker? What does it mean to sound like a native? If I'm learning Spanish, for example, does it mean to sound like a person from Madrid, or a person from San Sebastian, or a person from South America? And then you have all these different countries where people speak differently. And it's very difficult to say, this is what a native speaker sounds like. So, bottom line, good luck with your language learning. Don't stress too much about your accent or your pronunciation, but of course, work on it if it's something that you care about. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you subscribe and like this video. Bye!